Son, columnist, and father of one of the hosts, Andrew Bolt. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here.
So much Bolt in the room today.
Yes, and it's fantastic. So
I'm just going to keep people in suspense that I was your dad.
Yeah, he's on next week. So.
and he's got a few views about Milo himself. So, Dad, you've wrapped up recently. So you spoke at two of Milo Yiannopoulos' events around Australia. Obviously, our listeners are aware Milo's been on a tour of Australia. It's been pretty controversial in all the cities he's visited. I just want to go, why did you sort of think to yourself, I want to speak at these events?
Well, I was just about to do my own show, which you won't come on. May I just point out that I'm coming on yours.
20 seconds before back chat. All right. The over-under was 25, so if you had the
I was
under.
preparing for my show, the TV show, and then I saw a clip of the West Australian Premier, Mark McGowan, say, Milo Yiannopoulos is not welcome in Western Australia. We won't extend any government buildings, let him use any government buildings. And I thought, you bugger. And I got really cross. And you know how much I hate going out and prefer my weekends to be down, where we've got the house.
Yeah.
But I thought I'll come out of my cocoon because just to stick it up his kilt. And so I went there and opened, but I found myself in sort of unfamiliar territory. You know how antisocial I am. It's really quite...
Well, we'll get into that, but I do want to talk about that. So it is insane that we live in a liberal democracy where state premiers can get up and say this person, his views are not welcome in our state.
Not welcome.
And he's not even calling for anyone to die or like incitement to violence. He's just expressing views that some people don't agree with.
Yeah, I know. Here's the state with the rabbit-proof fence. Now they've got a conservative-proof fence. They're building a great fence. You may not pass, you may not speak. And there's just so much of it now lately, isn't there, don't you think?
Absolutely.
I mean, I was going to have a book launch here at the IPA in Melbourne, and I could hold book launches relatively safely all over Australia, but in Melbourne it had to be cancelled because of severe security advice about violence. They had a little recruiting table set up in the mall. The protesters with, something like Andrew Bolt scum, sign up here to make sure it's not welcome with this book launch. And the police, how many police did they offer to protect us? About 3, because the South Sudanese beauty pageant was on at the same night, apparently.
I've actually been to the South Sudanese beauty pageant.
What's that?
I've been to the South Sudanese beauty pageant.
Really?
Yeah. It was a big fight, actually.
Where did you come?
It was not near the top. So let's get into some of the things Milo says. As you mentioned in your column yesterday, some of the things he does say are very, nasty and offensive, and that turns a lot of people off. Do you think that
Does it turn you off?
It does, yeah. I kind of like, why can't you just make your point without speaking like that?
Yeah, there's it's like I've said in the past on the show where it's there's a really cool discussion to be had about, whether like the feminist Ghostbusters thing, whether anytime you watch the old Ghostbusters, are you being part of the patriarchy? Do we need to feminize all of our old things? That's a cool argument, but it's when you start, going at Leslie Jones on Twitter, one of the actresses in the movie, I think that's when we start, no one's discussing the feminist side of things anymore. It's now just about,
How many people have raised the feminist side of things, as you put it? Hundreds and hundreds of conservative libertarians. Yeah. He's done it in a way that sometimes is yuck, but done in a way that we notice. And I put exactly these points to him on stage, and he said, well, everyone else has failed.
Yeah.
And I think, well, look, if we, as I said, said to him, if we drop the civility that we believe conservatives stand for, then we've failed already. But on the other hand, he is part of a mega reality show in which the audience are willing recruits. They're extras in it. And part of that is, by saying certain things, no more rude than the average leftist comic or commentator, in fact, less rude, and provoking a over-the-top reaction, and a violent one that you never see outside a Barry Humphries thing, or, when Dan Illich says something, or when just Clementine Ford does a book launch. You never see the protest, but against Milo, they're extreme. And the audience sits there, and they're loving, the fact that it's tweaking the nose of the bear. They love that, because Conservatives and Libertarians have been taking it for years without hitting back. They love that. They love the howls of sanctimonious, hypocritical outrage from outside the venue. And they're part of an amazing reality show, which is called Hypocrisy on Tour. You know, we just see the hypocrites outside. And I tell you what, there is something fun about it. I'm a dad. I should tut-tut. I don't like the language. Don't you take that potty mouth with me, and don't you tell me it's okay because everyone else does it. But by crikey, see the hypocrites fume is pretty good.
Yeah. So that cut through, it makes it worthwhile.
Well, yeah, and you know, I got a tiny bit of it, only a tiny bit of it, and not willingly. But the time that I walked down the street to launch Steve Cates' book on Donald Trump, and two Antifa protesters with masks jumped me, and I smacked one of them in the chops. Yeah. I tell you what, I got more praise for that than for anything I've done in 20 years of writing columns. I should just go around punching people and I'm a hero.
Yeah, I've never had 20 of my friends congratulate me for one of your columns. Like, we'll put it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, you see. And while I shouldn't, be proud of hitting people, I think so many people who are conservatives or on the right or libertarians are so sick of the double standards, so sick and want to fight back.
Yeah, I get that, but it's sort of, to me, okay, Milo has done more to expose the actual fascism that underlies Antifa than anyone else in the world.
Yeah.
And I think, people on the street would start to really think about these Antifa people as people they don't want to be associated with. And
But they've been smacking people around for ages.
Yeah, I get that. But I just think, what is the state of open debate and the way we conduct ourselves in a debate if people like Milo are the leading voice for this kind of right wings?
Are they the leading voice? Again, I put that thing to him and he said, well, I'm just one gay guy. It's just me. And in a sense, that's right. And that's the other thing that I like about Milo. I've never seen and been associated with someone who makes me look the voice of reason to the left. Now, I can say, at least I'm not Milo. You deal with me. Before, everyone used to say, well, I'm not as mad as Andrew Bolt. So I'm glad that I'm not now the outlier. It's like pulling a rubber band. It doesn't come back to exactly the resting point. And I find myself in the delicious position of being more centrist, and people have wanted to credit me.
So we'll move on slightly here. So one of the things you pointed out in your article yesterday was Jane Hume's response to Milo Yiannopoulos, which I thought was so interesting. And you're right that there's no voices like Milo, and part of the reason is there's so many people in Parliament, people in senior positions who just don't want to be associated with him, despite him actually speaking for a lot of their constituents and a lot of people that agree with him. So what do you see as the underlying thing going on there when Jane Hume says, I don't get the mystique of, I don't get the
Well, there was a couple of things going on with Jane Hume, and one became clear to me from one of her colleagues who hit the roof, and I didn't pick up initially. Jane Hume said, words to the effect of, I don't get the fuss about Milo Yiannopoulos. Here is a person who is striking positions, appealing to the right, creating headlines, and so what? It's like the coalition party room. What she was having a go at, it seems to me now, this is the point made to me, was actually James Paterson, formerly of the IPA. Now, James is the youngest guy in Parliament. He's a libertarian, not of the hard right, as Jane Hume would have it. And he doesn't just strike poses. He goes into Parliament, stands up for free speech, even though it's for gay marriage, and proposed the bill and was constructive. He's a very intelligent guy. He's done far more that's constructive and noticeable and fighting for values than Jane Hume. I mean, what's Jane Hume ever done? Complete non-entity in Parliament. And yet she has a cheap shot at him, which I thought was disgusting. And not only that, she doesn't get the thing about Milo Yiannopoulos. I tell you what, I addressed on tour with Milo a couple of Liberal Party meetings where the mood was sombre, angry, defeated. particularly angry at the Liberals not standing for anything and not fighting for anything. Speaker after speaker, because I did Q&A sessions with Mike Nahan, former director of the IPA, now opposition leader in WA, the speakers were furious about this and despondent and wanting to fight back. Well, Milo Yiannopoulos does fight back. Not with the weapons I choose, but he fights back. And the energy in his audiences, by contrast, was amazing. Amazing. I know I'm loath in the left, but when I go to IPA functions, I get a heartening cheer, and that's why your mum, James, keeps telling me to go out more, and I'd have more. I wouldn't be so depressed sometimes. But I tell you, none of the cheers I've got, even at an IPA function, was like the ones I got on stage with Milo, and the boos for Turnbull were louder still. I'm thinking if the Liberals can't engage with these people, then who are they engaging with? These are libertarians and people who are sick of the political correctness, identity politics and all that. The Liberals aren't engaging them. Milo is. And for a Liberal senator to say she doesn't get any of this tells me Jane Hume represents the Turnbull Liberals. Exactly why they're out of touch and they don't represent the future and they're leading the Liberals over a cliff.
So on to
Is that a nice enough spray?
that was a
good spray. Is there anything left?
I don't know.
You can add to that, Pete. Go right ahead.
Oh no,
Jane Hume. ...
Well,
We talk policy, not politics, Dan.
But this is the thing. Maybe we should talk personality. I always think personalising things that sticks in people's mind more.
Yeah, and I think the New Zealand election just shows that as well. You know, it's all about the personality of the leader to me. Donald Trump as well.
They've got to embody the
what you're
values,
getting.
don't they?
Yeah, and Jeremy Corbyn in Britain. I mean,
Yeah.
despite his policies being disgusting, you knew exactly what you were getting. You're like, I know this.
But they
guy's
fight
speaking
for
to
something.
me.
Well, you give them credit, don't you?
Absolutely. I just go. Whenever
So
Jeremy
what does
Corbyn,
Jane Hume fight for? Name something. You know.
she fights against Milo apparently.
And James Patterson.
Yeah.
I actually just had to Google there what you were talking about. So
There you go. All right, James Patterson then, Pete. What does he fight for?
well, I mean, I know James very well, but he's obviously a libertarian, fights for freedom.
So you can answer that question, but you couldn't answer of Jane Hume.
Correct.
And she's part of the machine. She's
That's
part of
right.
the Liberal machine.
Yeah.
So what does the Liberal Party need?
Isn't that
do you think?
don't you find that rather scary?
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole thing about Milo is that he speaks to people the way that the Liberal Party don't.
So what do you think
Or
Jane
any party
Hume has
does.
gone into politics for?
Don't know.
We don't
Do you
really
know?
want to.
Couldn't-
We don't really.
Oh, all
wanna
right,
get
all
into
right.
that sort of
Let me
thing.
think. Let me think of someone else. Trent Zimmerman. What do you think he's gone into politics for?
Yeah.
What is? All right, I'll give you a better one, Pete. What has Malcolm Turnbull gone into politics for? Do you think?
Don't know. Like
You follow it?
He probably thinks he is running the country well. He probably thinks,
Running the country well.
yeah.
Well, Adolf Hitler thought he ran the country well. I'm not comparing him.
Yeah.
No, but that's nothing. Everyone wants to go in there and run the country well.
Yeah.
It's what you run it where? Where are you driving this
Well,
country?
you might
What
have
do you
to
think,
ask him
Malcolm?
that.
Yeah, but this is the point. We shouldn't be having. Oh, we should ask him that. He's been Prime Minister for 2 years, and you as an observer can't answer that. I'm not picking on you because I can't either. This is the point. This is the point.
So where do you think this needs to go for the Liberal Party? Like, do they need Do they need to be destroyed in the next election and just like from a phoenix rise from the ashes? Or do you
I'm
reckon?
getting a touch of the Milos here. I'm telling you what. I'm lashing out.
Yeah. I'm trying to cage the beast, but
Oh yeah. Try to. Yeah. Can you wink at me over the mic now and then when you think I'm going too far?
I've tried to interrupt you about 4 times. But you weren't biting on that one either. Don't know if winking's going to be the thing that helps.
You save me from myself, James. Save me. What was the question?
I was going to say, like, so we've got a systemic problem in the Liberal Party, as you see it. So how does it fix itself?
Oh,
Is
how
it
would
a
I like
whitewash
it to
in the
be
next
destroyed
election?
to a smouldering ruin, and then we go and pick up the pieces. The only thing is, of course, when I went to Western Australia, people saying, "Oh, we'd probably lose 5 seats here, or just in Western Australia, which is the election." And then you go and look at the seats. Christian Porter, who's actually doing great work, right, and he's a Conservative. Andrew Hastie, the future. His seat would also be gone. And this is the thing. When we think, oh well, the smoking, let's just destroy the Liberal Party in order to rebuild it. The cockroaches will probably live, and the good ones are all dead.
Yeah.
True. Oh, sorry. No, you're making faces at me.
Oh, we're just like,
I should never have gone on
this is
tour with
sad.
Milo. I should have been Mr. Respectable, reading my Socrates and Plato, and
So, do you feel like going on tour with Milo might cause a change of direction for you?
Apparently it has.
Yeah. A few harsh
Bring
truths
me
could
down
be
to
leveled
earth.
in public.
No, but I do get fed up, and sometimes I do think, why would people say it's a big rap, as you know, it's a big knock on me, as you know. I'm so mean to Malcolm Turnbull and now Jane Hume that all I'm doing is paving the way for Bill Shorten, and that is infinitely worse. Then Labor will have won, and I'm thinking, well, hasn't Labor won already?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the point of a Liberal government that implements
A
many
banking inquiry.
Labor ideas?
Yeah, exactly. Like the big thing this week was a Royal Commission into the banks, which is something Labor's been pushing for years.
Yeah, but it's worse than that. Because to stave off the Royal Commission into the banks, which, as you say, Labor's been pushing for years, the Liberals have passed one law after another or regulation after another to prove that they're just as tough as the banks and you don't need the Royal Commission, so let's regulate bankers' salaries. It's Bernie Sanders probably wouldn't even do, Let's regulate how...
I wouldn't put it past him.
True,
Give him
yeah.
power.
It's probably combing the papers and said, hey, Malcolm Turnbull, that's my guy. That's a great idea.
Can he be vice president?
Can he be vice president? So they've done that. They've got a banking tribunal. They've bashed the banks, a bank tax. They've done all these things to stave off the Royal Commission. And now there's a Royal Commission as well. So it's like a double whammy. And, for the Liberals, they've got to think, here's Malcolm Turnbull, who's been fighting against a Royal Commission into the banks for nearly 2 years. And at the end of his best endeavours, after 2 years, you look at the polls, Australians have considered his arguments, and 5-1, they've said we want a Royal Commission to the banks. This is a bloke you don't want to be defending your life in court. Let me tell you that.
Not at all.
You probably go in for a misdemeanor, hire him to save you, get hanged for murder.
All right. On that note, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
A pleasure. Thank you.